All right. Hey, everybody. So it's
Hey,
Wednesday night, my time, Thursday morning, Mike's time. Mike
it
is
is.
the channel Analog Attack.
Hey,
He's a guy from the UK that lives in Japan. He has
that's
been
right.
for quite some time. Um, and we're gonna hang out and have a talk.
We are.
Mike,
We are.
Mike, how you doing?
You know what? I'm doing all right. It's a public holiday over here. Like usually, I'd be at work right now. So I'm at home, and it's like, yeah, it's 9 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday. Went out
Excellent.
last night for a few nice craft beers with a friend. So not in the best condition, but
Mhm.
I'm ready to go.
Fair
And I've got
enough.
my hair of the dog breakfast beer,
Excellent.
Sapporo.
Of course.
That's of course. Yeah, my show is sponsored by Sapporo Beer. In case
I love those big cans you get at the sushi restaurants over here. They're real good.
they are.
How
Yeah.
long you
Oh,
been there?
just just to show everyone, this is the special spring version with
Oh
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
with the cherry blossom on there. So
Very
you probably
nice.
don't have these over there yet. I think this is a
No,
Japan
no.
only thing. So
Yeah, we just have those massive
the
because like
500
Americans like
milliliter ones, right?
yeah, Americans like really huge beers, right? Here you go. Just like the Japanese beer equivalent of the Foster's oil can. Not that anybody drinks Foster's in Australia, but that's a whole other thing.
True.
Uh, Tell the audience real quick. Where are you in Japan again?
I'm right in Osaka City, like
Okay,
pretty central Osaka City.
cool.
Yeah. Osaka City, what are we talking? Like Frampted is a
Mm-hmm.
local band. Nightmare is probably the longest running band from
Yeah,
Osaka.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, how far? This is like real basic ass questions, but like, how
All right.
far is that from like where in the country is that situated? Like in
All
what
right.
regard?
So it's like west, kind of central. So from Osaka, you can get to Kyoto in like 40 minutes.
Okay.
You can get to Kobe in like 30 minutes from my house. It's kind of near. On the bullet train, the Shinkansen, you can get to
Hmm.
Tokyo in like 2.5 hours.
Cool. Okay.
And Nagoya is about an hour and a half away by train. Pretty convenient place to be.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah,
So the thing that I usually ask to kind of
sure.
lead things off into these discussions is what have you been into? What are you listening to? I'm
What am I
totally different.
listening to? What show is
What's
this?
what have you been consuming? No, it's not only listening. Actually, it's like anything, like
I
movies,
know.
books, that kind of stuff. What have you been into? What you've been getting
Well,
into this week?
like I have a full-time job. I teach English. Out in the
Hmm.
out in the sticks. I have a hell of a commute. I have like a 2 hour commute on the way there,
Oh
and
wow.
2 hours on the way back. Obviously, I tend to like fucking like when I'm on the train. I don't really do anything very productive. It's like YouTube rabbit holes
Hmm.
on the train. That's what I do. But I'm the kind of person that I have a real hard time concentrating on one thing at one time. The attention span is like really really bad. So like I have all these books that I've been trying to get into, like the Jerry A trilogy.
Oh yeah, yeah. Those look really interesting because it's his childhood and
Yeah,
then
that's
heyday of
it.
like craziness,
That's
and then
it.
his later life.
So
Yeah.
you got like volume one with his childhood there, you can see that, and then volume two. This is the best one. Well, the best picture. The heyday of Poison Idea,
Yep.
and then the now Jerry. The mellow, the mellowed out dude. Do you
Louder
follow him on
speed.
Facebook at all?
I should. I
It's
really should.
pretty.
He's an interesting guy. The closest I've come to really checking in on him and what he's up to currently is I listened to the Damian Abraham Turned Out a Punk
There
interview
you
with
go.
him a
Mm-hmm.
year or two ago, and it was great. It was super interesting. I just remember there was the Poison Idea performance at Chaos and Chaos, and I had all my years scrambled for those. It was like 2009 or 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Bunch of Japanese bands playing.
Yeah.
I think it was the year Bastard played, and
Right.
like it was known as like not a very good set. Although I don't know, I'm so easily pleased. I was like, I'm seeing Poison Idea. I don't know, like I
Yeah,
noticed he wasn't really giving it his all with some of the singing, but I was like, I don't care, get it away, like, whatever, it's cool, just to
yeah.
get it away SSD. But so yeah, I don't know, but he seemed like that interview. He seemed like a really cool, interesting dude that still seemed pretty in touch with stuff going on, and
He's married. He's met a really nice woman. They do like these Facebook Live streams like every Friday, I think. It's pretty entertaining.
yeah, like I always think of him when I think him and Pusshead when I think of people that really dug in and brought in a lot of and were crazy nerds about bringing over a lot of
Sure.
international hardcore into their record collections, and like through letter writing and stuff, like got to be friends with bands all over the world. So, I mean, for that alone, I'm like, yeah. And not to mention the fact he was a singer for fucking Poison Idea. So
Yeah.
there's
He,
that
he, he
too.
was like, he was definitely into like Japanese hardcore early on, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, I can't remember what it was they covered Endless Blockades on, but that was like mid 80s or something, I think.
Yeah,
Maybe.
they did a few things. They did that was on We Must Burn, right? And then
Yeah, I think
on
so.
this 10-inch, they also did Death Agonies and Screams on
Right.
this
Yep.
10-inch as well. So yeah, which old Mister Sakavi wasn't happy about apparently.
Yeah, he had some good stories about touring in Japan too on that podcast. So
They came twice. Okay, so the first time will be a little bit similar to your Chaos in Texas experience. They played 2 nights in Osaka. Great lineups, SOB, Frampted, Nightmare, Warhead. Two
so
nights, 2 nights at the same venue. I got there early on the first night, and Jerry was there, and he had like all these like miniature whiskey bottles, but like about 50 of them, all in his pockets.
yeah,
And
nips.
he would just get one out, throw the bottle away. Next one, throw the bottle away. And he's like, "Hey, you want to help me write the set list?" And I was like, "Sure." So I was just like, "Play this one, but play this one. How about that one?" He's like, "Oh yeah, we'll try and do that one." And he wrote all the songs down, but I don't know if they actually did that set list or not. I don't remember, but they were bad though. Like, in fact, they were kind of threatened to be kicked off and sent back home because they were so bad. But they came back, and Jerry came back to kind of redeem himself, and they did some amazing gigs. Like 20, must be like 20 years later, I guess. It's a few years ago, just before COVID, they were here.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it seems like the kind of culturally that kind of scenario where if you messed up, it's like, hey, you should go back. Maybe you should go back and
yeah, and like he was sober, and the band were like real professional.
good. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it was cool. It was cool. So yeah, that was the Jerry A books that I haven't read, haven't read yet, but I read like a little bit and then put it down and didn't get back to it again. I got another one, the GBH book.
That's great.
Have you read
read.
it? See,
Yeah,
you can see like my bookmark in there. It's like on page
yeah.
20. Yeah, yeah, and then
I have
the
a
Lemmy book.
backlog of I have a backlog of like 3 or 4 books myself.
Yeah,
What's that
I
one?
started. Yeah. Oh, this is the like Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers Motorhead book by
Yep.
Mr. Martin Popoff.
Yep. And no, I don't have that, but I have another book that I started reading
Right.
that was like almost like early fanzines about Motorhead. It was like written by
Nice.
punters that originally kicked them off when they were playing in the clubs and stuff. And
Right.
it was a bunch of like people hanging out with the bands and just talking about like, stuff that happened at the gigs and whatnot. And I got kind of far in that, but I didn't finish it. So
Yeah, it's like I've got to read more books. It's just it's terrible. Just can't concentrate.
well, this year, because of the movie coming out, or last year rather, 2022, I told myself I gotta read Dune. All my friends have read
Right.
Dune. I like science fiction and fantasy a lot. I read a lot of that kind of stuff when I was younger, and it's like I've put it down for so long. It's almost like when you go through a couple month period of working out regularly, and you have like a good a good
Yeah.
routine. It's like, all right, I'm going to go into Arrakis now and see what's going on with the still suit situation and everything. And I'm like, fuck, like I can't, like this book is literally dry. It's got great character development and cool stuff happens,
Right.
but I'm like, my brain doesn't work like this anymore. Like, thank you very much, cell phones. Fuck, like I can't do
Exactly.
this.
I mean, I don't have a TV either. So I don't have that thing where I just sit down and like just watch like one TV program. So it's either like YouTube or Netflix, and I my
Yeah.
Netflix is just like 20 or 30 shows that I started watching and then just like never ever finished. You know?
I'm pretty good with finishing shows, but and binge watching stuff, but I'm trying. We're my wife and I are trying to like, not trying to, but lately we've been just watching more movies because we have that
Yeah.
horror service Shudder,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
I'm kind of like, yeah, well, let's, we're out of streaming stuff to watch. Like, let's watch an old horror movie. Let's watch like Tourist Trap or something like that. Which is cool because it's got that
Right.
host, Billy Bob there, and
Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
that's a lot easier to when it's broken up into chunks and he's like spitting facts at you about about the movies and everything.
Right,
So
right.
that's been enjoyable, but like I don't know, I a lot of times I have to kind of force myself into sitting down and listening to to albums because I'm watching random stuff on YouTube and listening to podcasts where people are talking about 7 inches, as opposed to listening to
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. But about like the Netflix stuff, Korean stuff, that's where I'm at. I really love like just the like love stories and stuff. There's something about them that I'm really into. The Korean dramas is my thing. I've
it's
made it through a lot of those.
I've seen like a little snippets about that stuff.
Mm.
It seems really interesting. Like it seems pretty cool.
There's just something about it that kind of like draws you in, and you're addicted before you even realize. It's crazy. It's so much better than the Japanese stuff.
Hmm.
Gotta
No
say,
shit.
yeah.
Anything anything spinning for you this week, music wise?
Oh God, you want to start? You want to start that now? It's like I've got a huge. It's like,
Don't feel pressure.
no, it's okay.
A couple of things is fine.
So I've got like okay. So I'm doing this show, right? The What Are You Listening show. So I've got my records set up for that, but I've also got. I say every week, it's supposed to have like 5 records, right, for the show.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be listening to like 155 or
Right on.
255 records, so it's like narrowing it down to only the 5 is always tricky. So I've got this huge pile of records that I've been listening to that I'm probably like never gonna show on my channel just for whatever reason. I can't find a place to fit them in, or so I've got a ton of those sat
Nice.
right here. Yeah.
Anything?
Okay, let's get started on this. And so, like, my biggest surprise and shock and delight actually was this thing. I think I posted this on Bill's
Oh yeah. Okay.
Facebook group. This is like an old Japanese band called Kyoyaku Kyojindan, Kyoyaku Kyojindan, who've been around since the early 80s, but they've kind of been silent. I think their last album is this one, which came out like in the 90s. This is the old one, like never came out on vinyl.
Huh.
And this thing came out last year, and I didn't even know about it. I was in Disc Union, like last Friday, and it's like, Jesus Christ, what's this? It's like a new like mini album, one-sided thing on red vinyl. That's the label logo on the back.
Cool.
But yeah, this band is basically the brainchild of one guy called the Crazy SKB. Who are you familiar with that guy, Patrick?
Not at all. No.
See, a lot of people aren't, like, outside of Japan. It's a real like Japanese thing. I mean, he's had his own label since like 80, 81, 82. He's been in a ton of bands, and it's like, it's weird. It's like kind of hardcore, kind of punk, kind of industrial, kind of experimental. He does like comedy records. He does wrestling as well. He's like a pro wrestler.
What?
And yeah,
Do you know what he wrestles under? Because I know a little bit about Japanese, not a ton.
he
But
wrestles under the name the Crazy SKB, and the
oh.
wrestling promotion is the 666 thing.
Oh wow. Okay. So it's not like New Japan Pro Wrestling or anything.
No, but it's not quite that level, but it's pretty popular.
Okay.
And I have a feeling he might be involved in like the management of that.
Okay.
But like so that's that band, like Kyoyaku Kyojindan, and like I didn't really say what it sounded like, but man, he's kind of always been into the Stalin. So there's a big like Stalin influence like in all of the stuff that he's involved with.
Well,
but
Stalin,
like,
great. So.
but not just Stalin. It's like they add all like these electronics in there, like programmed drums, and that record has like the like traditional Japanese instruments, like the shakuhachi and the shamisen and all this stuff going on. It's pretty crazy. So that would have been my favorite record of last year if I'd have known that it was out.
Yeah, sounds really cool.
And it kind of reminded me of that Psy record. It doesn't really, from last year, it doesn't really sound exactly like it, but it has similar things like the traditional Japanese instruments and stuff going on.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I have to. My buddy Matt at the Dark Path. If you're watching, Matt, check out the
Hey,
record he just talked about because
yeah,
I think Matt's actually done a. Believe he's done a side deep dive. If not, he's due to do one soon. It's one of his favorite bands, and that
so yeah,
band is
mm,
incredible.
this is the record. It's kind of hard to search for. Like everything's in Japanese. No
Yeah.
outside of Japan distribution at all.
Mm.
None of the punk record stores had copies. I got this from Disc Union, but it's. We'll put more information down below. It's kind of hard to Google or whatever. But
Yeah, because I saw you post it in the Facebook group, and I just the cover art alone, I was like,
well,
that looks really cool.
it's done by the same guy that did the Stalin Mushi.
Yep.
So there's that Stalin connection
Gotcha.
again. But it's crazy because my favorite band of his was this other band called the High Technology Suicide. I don't know that band. Who only put out like a bunch of CDs in the 90s. Kind of like Stalin with this like crazy artwork. Yeah.
Shit.
High Technology Suicide. Yeah, this is kind of.
I don't know if it looks the same way on your end, but you are wicked pixely, and I think it's just probably the connection or something. I'm not sure exactly why, if it's your end or mine, but
it's looking okay when I'm looking at it, but it's
yeah. Also,
so yeah,
when the recording actually is done, it might actually come out looking different. I've seen that a few times. So, but
cool. Yeah, so that was like my biggest surprise and of the last week was finding that record. Yeah,
nice.
Didn't even know about it.
With me this week, I've been I frantically rushed to list a bunch of stuff in my distro because I got a bunch of large boxes in from $20 spin and the Crypt, which is like a obscure death metal reissue label and some other stuff. So I've just been kind of on that trip myself, but not so much what I was listening to, which has been from those orders. Cause I usually, if it's something I want to carry, usually I order an extra copy for myself, but listening to a couple of different bands the past couple of weeks, it's been like a year for grindcore, like for the really tight kind of death metal-y grindcore so far. There's been a couple of really good records. The Sonic Poison record is fucking excellent. They're from Finland. It's very like Repulsion, Slaughter kind of stuff. I got listening to all this stuff, and I also made a mixtape for an old friend of mine and put it. I was talking with Jason last update about how making mixes, you get towards the end of the first side or second side, and you're like, oh, I only have this little bit of tape left. I gotta throw some really short stuff on there. So I was like whipping out Grind 7-inches, and I pulled out a 7-inch by this band that I just got this in the mail. Avulsion from Buffalo. They were this weird kind of gray area between grind and more or less like power violence. Like this came out on 625. It's a compilation. It's a couple of 7-inches and I think like more or less an album recording. And it's like oscillating back and forth between the kind of hardcore PV kind of shouts and like almost gurgly gore grind kind of vocals and really tight, really, really well played like grindcore stuff. So Buffalo and Rochester those two towns have a huge history for that kind of stuff. So yeah, I was like, I used to have this back in my crusty days, and I had it and it was like too metal for me. And I eventually I think flipped it or something. I was like, this doesn't have enough, this is too technical for my tastes. And then I was like, I went on to Discogs and I was like, oh God, I hope it's not one of these CDs that are almost $40 now. Thankfully,
Yeah.
rising was around 20 or something like that. So that's fine. That's within my budget. So that's what I've been spending a lot this week myself.
That has like some Japanese artwork on the front.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if it's like just that kind of era where there was a lot of like nods to the Wu-Tang Clan and stuff like that, or necessarily like a cinematic thing. The name of the CD is the Crimson Foliage Hit, which I don't know if that's a reference to.
Kind of sounds like something that's been translated from a Japanese movie or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I don't know. I don't know if I don't think they were one of those bands that like toured Japan or anything like that. I think they were pretty local most of their existence. They were around for a long time. Their last recording was, this was all stuff from the 90s, but they carried on well into like the mid 2000 teens, I want to say. But and their vocalist was the original vocalist for this band Anthropic that I'm carrying the CD. This just came out. But I messaged these guys personally being like, I want to carry your new CD. I really liked your last one. And this is more, kind of along the lines of my flavor of the week here, which is, this is more kind of Terrorizer, Utopia Banished era, Napalm Death kind of stuff, but like watertight, like really, really well played, kind of death metal-y grindcore stuff. They're older dudes from Buffalo. They had a big lineage with early 90s death metal-ish grind, Immortal Terror, and I think Malignant Tumor was the name of the other band. Just like dudes that know what they're doing as far as writing stuff like that. So
nice.
So that's mainly what I've been spending this week.
A lot of grind.
It's not always like that here, but and this one too. This band ETD. This is a Texas band, and this is a little bit grosser, like Impetigo, maybe a little bit more an Autopsy, but like really fast grind, almost bordering on gore kind of grind stuff.
Wow.
One of these deals where the cassette is printed,
Oh wow, that's nice.
Yeah. And this guy in this band, Francisco, who also does a channel called Jamming Out All Badass, that he's had a lot of cool guests, a lot of like old heads from grind and death metal. He had the guy from Fear of God on and stuff. He's been around for a while and really knows his stuff and has played in some really good bands. This is the fastest record that I've ever had to sell out. I had not that I had a lot of copies. I had like 3 of them, but they all went immediately as soon as I put them up because apparently they've sold out everywhere else. So I tried to look up what this stood for in preparation. ETD. I couldn't figure that out, but it's really good. Anyway, good grind. So yeah, that's what I've been spinning this week myself.
I don't know if you notice how it's kind of like looking around on my shelf because I haven't bought any new grind for a while. I have bought one new grind thing record. It's a Japanese one too. It's pretty cool. You know this band? Brob. B-R-O-B.
Nope.
It was just in the cheap bins. I mean, it's a Japanese band, but it was released on a foreign label, 1% Records. I think that's an American label. Yeah, it's pretty cool. They do an Agathocles cover on there. But I played it at the wrong speed the first couple of times. Didn't notice.
Yeah. Always a sign of quality.
Played it at 45. I was like, it kind of sounds, I guess it kind of should sound like this. It sounded like Unholy Grave when I played it at 45. And then I was listening to it on YouTube at work. And I was like, I've been playing this at the wrong speed. So I got back home that night, played it at the right speed. And it's better, actually. It sounds more like SOB kind of later era mid, SOB. It's a good record. Brob. Again, I don't know what that means either. Going back to your thing just there. B-R-O-B. Brob. But yeah, Japanese grind. This is like 20 years old now, though, I think. But
that cover art's fucking cool.
Yeah, it's a good record. If anyone hasn't checked this out, it's good. Japanese grind.
What label was it on? Do you think it's available over here at all? Oh, you said
there's 3 labels listed on the back. So 1% Records, Grind Soul Records, and Pacino Records. There you go.
Okay.
And it was 1,000 yen when it came out, which is cheap for an
Yeah.
LP. So anyway, that's my grind pick for the week. Brob. Empty Life is the name of the record.
It was on the
I haven't
wrong
listened to it this week. But I just thought I'd throw it in there.
It was on the wrong speed, so it sounded like Unholy Road. Perfect.
The very high pitched yappy vocals. But, I don't know much about that band, but Japanese grindcore in general is kind of a bit of a mystery. I know there's a pretty big scene actually of like young bands.
It does. I haven't delved in. I mean, I know Unholy Grave, I know Bathtub Shitter, and there's of course like the old heads like SOB and everything, but I don't. There's a lot. I mean, I think of was it Dayu Bastard has a Gizm member, right? They're
the drummer, yeah.
I don't think they're
Iron Fist. He was in Crow too, right?
Yeah. But beyond that, I know there's a lot more. I mean, generally with Japan, I feel like there's a really big scene for almost everything, but that just might be me being presumptuous. But I don't know. I'm fascinated by like the Japanese like beatdown bands and
we have a lot of those in Osaka.
NYHC. Oh, really? Is Sand from Osaka?
Yeah, that's the big band in that style. Probably the biggest band in that style, and they're from Osaka.
Okay, yeah. My wife has she has a Sand windbreaker.
Really?
Yeah.
I've been to a few of their shows. Just not for me. I just say that, but
well,
there's a ton of those bands.
I remember there was a Japanese hardcore comp that looked like the Revelation Way It Is comp, and the guitarist of my old band had it back in the day. Like we're talking 99 or 2000 or something, but it had like TJ Maxx and Brick Butt. And like, is that all? Okay. All right. So Osaka's the spot for that. Okay.
Yes. I'm in the wrong city. Yeah. TJ Maxx is another one.
Yeah. I mean, some of that stuff. Yeah. TJ Maxx is just, I mean, it's pretty like low hanging fruit to like bring up language differences and be like, get over it. But
isn't it like some kind of chain store?
It is. That's why it's kind of funny. Is like it's the big chain store that sells like second run type of stuff like discount jeans. It's Marshalls, and then the next tier below that is TJ Maxx.
Nice.
It's like it's in plazas and stuff. And
do they spell it with 2 X's?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so they just took the name exactly as it is.
Yep. TJ Maxx. I mean, you can get some good, like, decently priced Champion gear and stuff at TJ Maxx. So it's not really like, like it comes from a very real place, I feel.
Their album, though, their LP is actually pretty decent. It's more like on the hardcore side of things.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I checked out because you get bored, and eventually all this stuff that you hear about, like, in a tertiary kind of sense. 20 years ago, you're like, if you have collector brain or whatever, you're like, I'm sure I can check that out on YouTube and hear how it actually sounds. And I did. I saw some really well recorded, professionally shot, I believe, live footage of TJ Maxx, and I was like, this is good. Was
it in kind of quite a fairly big looking place with a kind of big stage?
From what I recall, yeah.
That party would have been a place called Bayside Jenny, which it's gone now, but it was a kind of big venue down by the port side in Osaka. I went to a ton of shows there when I first moved to Japan. I saw the Misfits there actually.
Oh geez,
Graves Fist. That's yeah, with Balzac supporting.
Oh yeah, that was that band, Balzac, whatever.
Balzac,
like. I remember seeing like in Zine, I think I saw ads for them in Maximum Rock and Roll before the new Misfits even started. And
right.
Like, whoa, like Japanese, like Misfits worship. And maybe their early stuff is really good. But by the time I could find a CD that made it to American stores, it was the most overproduced, like almost fat record sounding, like pop punk stuff. I was just like, I can't, man.
They're an Osaka band too. They have their own shop and like clothing brand.
Oh wow!
and merch. It's called Shocker. It's the name of the store.
They
But
look
yeah,
really
they started off like on MCR and put out just some very raw like Misfits stuff. But then they started adding all like the programmed drums and electronics and like pop punk choruses and all that kind of
yeah.
stuff.
Because I remember it was a double CD or one of those CDs that also had CD-ROM on it. It was that era. And I was like, oh, cool. We'll check out. No, I think it came with a bonus DVD is what it was.
All
I
right.
was like, cool. I'll check out the music video. And the music video was rad. Dude's like riding a motorcycle around. He's like tucking his devil lock under his like full face helmet and like just looking hard as hell. And there were a couple songs on that recording that were fine, but I was severely disappointed because I wanted to hear the Japanese, Misfits worship band for like 5 or 6 years at that point, and I was a little bit let down because it did have pretty much like Epitaph kind of production and was too clean or whatever. But
I'm tempted to duck down and pull out a bunch of their records because they're really not, but I won't. But going back to that record I showed with the artwork at the beginning, Balzac had him do a bunch of cover art for them too.
Oh, okay.
The guy who did the Stalin and the Kyoaku Kyojindan, same artist.
Gotcha.
It's kind of big name artist.
Not cheap. Yeah.
Not cheap.
So,
I would imagine, yeah.
So if you saw the Graves Fits there, you've been I know you've been there for a very long time, but has it been since the mid-90s since you've moved over to Japan?
No, honestly, I feel like I saw them like literally within like 3 months of moving here.
Okay.
So that would have been like really right at the tail end of the 90s for sure.
Okay.
Like 98, 99, something like that.
Okay. That sounds about right. And
yeah.
you worked for MCR? You like helped run stuff?
I was just doing like the UK distribution for MCR. But that was like from like 1989 to like 1993. I was kind of doing that.
Oh, okay. So that was before you even moved over there.
Yeah, before I moved here. But I'd been to Japan a few times before that, But I moved here in like 98, 99, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's been a while, like 25 years, right? Jesus.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. Yeah.
Yeah. Almost half my life, let's put it like that.
I know. I mean, believe me, I'm right there with you. I'm like, oh yeah, 1998 was 7 years ago.
yeah. That was a kind of running joke last week on the episode about this new record that was from 2002.
Yeah, I know. Well, now what I've been thinking about lately is because there's been this whole new wave of hardcore. Like hardcore, if it's going to survive, needs to do new stuff all the time.
Right.
And I think DIY hardcore has done a pretty good job of that. I think metal has too, but they're separate. And a big part of my existence is kind of, navigating the balance between the two. But like I remember when the more bands started coming around with like a mysterious approach. And there was the whole discourse about mysterious guy hardcore and all that kind of stuff. Starting with, talking about like Fucked Up and Mind Eraser. But I remember when like Hoax started getting big and Cream and stuff like that.
Crazy Spirit, Vile Spirit, are they included in that?
I don't know. I mean, it would seem they would be. I'm not sure, but now we have like Scowl and Spy and all these like monosyllabic, like poorly photocopied on purpose looking bands and stuff.
I think Andy kind of touched on that a little bit last week when he was saying a lot of bands named after food products, but I actually couldn't think of one. But
yeah, and it's its own thing, and it's like okay, I mean, when I was coming around, when I was coming of age, it was all compound word bands. It was like Chokehold, Unbroken, like that kind. Drill Bit, and that's not a real band, but
that's funny though, Pat, because just going back to that Japan thing again, like when I moved here, there'd been that period where like a lot of the old bands had broken up. So Deathside had broken up, and Bastard had broken up, and they had all these new bands, and they all called things like Paintbox and Judgment, things like that. So that it was kind of ties in with that a little bit, right? It was like this new thing.
Curtain Rail.
Rail, yeah.
But what I was getting to was that the beginning of all this, like, kind of trying to escape hardcore tropes and doing something a little bit more arty, but still being hardcore, with like Hoax and bands like that. Like that was over 10 years ago now. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. That was like around the time that I went back to school, for my career that I have now. I'm in healthcare. I'm like, oh, that was over a decade ago. Like, holy shit. So yeah, I mean,
it's funny kind of being where I am. I'm kind of like ignorant of certain things. I don't know. Like, maybe I'll post something. Oh, that's a total like hipster band. I'm like, are they? I don't know. It's like I'm just not aware of what a certain band's audience is or like anything. I'm just like I'm in my own bubble in a way.
I mean, that very well may have something to do with, your geographic locale for sure. But I mean, I think a lot of it is just being older and the internet completely diffusing a lot of
sure
what anything is. You know what I mean? Like,
sure, right.
I mean, I go on. It's kind of for one thing, message boards, most message boards. Message boards don't have the role that they used to have.
Right.
Being just a means of communication between people that were actually physically
right.
at shows.
Right.
And now it's kind of dissolved into, I don't use Discord. I don't think people do for hardcore, but there's like, I think people talk about hardcore on Reddit a little bit, which seems pretty milquetoast compared to what used to happen on message boards. And then Facebook groups, and I mean, younger people are just like, Facebook, you guys are still on that shit. Like, what, and I think there's a certain amount of discussion about stuff on Twitter, but like Twitter seems more geared towards people that just want to argue about stuff, whether it be political or whatever. Facebook is actually great. Like, I know it's boomer shit, but like the What Are You Listening To group is awesome.
I was gonna bring that up. We'll maybe talk about it a bit more later, but
yeah,
I mean, it is. It's there's almost zero like sniping other people's tastes, or
it's totally positive. There's people where I'm like, oh, you're a legend to me. Like, holy shit. Like, dude, like, there's a lot of people like that on there and they're all totally nice. I feel like the same, like even ground applies to your channel, where I can be on a chat with Brian. I mean, I've met Brian and I've met Nate too. But I also hold their art in very high regard, not to be super corny about it, but I love Drop Dead, and most of Nate's projects I've been a fan of for a long time. And that's kind of the point of like punk and hardcore, is we're all on the same playing field, and like,
should be, right?
It's cool that actually is happening. Like that. I've had situations where I'm like, oh, it's the punk scene, and I run into so-and-so from whatever band and get big timed, and that has not happened at all in that Facebook group or on your channel, which is amazing. It's great.
You've got people like Chris Bald in there from like, The Faith posting in there, and like, but yeah, it's just one kind of big family, like kind of how it used to be. And like, there's some cheeky humor, but it's very, it's not nasty. It's kind of there's some good natured humor going on in there, which I like. I like that kind of thing. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, Bill's group is where I got the idea for like my show. Is like, let's do like a video version of that group, right?
Yeah,
that's how I came about. I asked Bill, what do you think? He's like, yeah, go ahead, go and do it. Let's do it. It's all yours. Go do it.
That's great. You got the blessing. You got the blessing from the Don. That's excellent.
Yeah. So it's like, what are you listening to? Like the movie version,
Yeah, whatever. It's been really fun so far. Like, I feel like it's been pretty well received. It seems,
I get a lot of positive feedback. As we YouTubers, we're always maybe like a bit disappointed about, more people should be watching this kind of thing. But what are you going to do? It's like,
whatever. It is what it is. It's totally weird because like, I'm a person that I've been around, I paid my dues. Like I've been around since however long, going to shows and playing. I played in a lot of bands, just none of them really went anywhere. So that's like when you asked me for that first time, The first one I went on, it's like, what do you want to be known by? I'm like, I don't know if anybody really remembers Class Action or Daggers Rule or Mechanable. Like a lot of my band stuff was like, stuff that I was more than happy to do. Like it was a lot of fun. I was never for the clout or anything, but like one band went on a tour and like the rest of them were pretty local. That's fine. But yeah, so I've been around, but it's weird. I find it weird that I have, because I've been doing this for a little bit, probably a little bit longer than yourself, but I also have never had Barney from Napalm Death on my channel or any of the dudes from Drop Dead or anything like that. Like
Barney's the coolest. He's great,
I can tell. It looks like he just hurt his ankle.
He broke his ankle. I was just talking to him a little bit yesterday, and like he's getting injections in his stomach daily to stop like blood clotting.
Oh, jeez.
He's fully broken ankle. He's performing like sat down in a chair with a cast on.
Yeah, I saw Bob from Drop Dead. I saw it, posted it on Facebook there.
But it's not the first time. He did it in 2019 too on the US tour. He did the same thing.
Stop those jumps, man.
It's that funny little way he walk. Apparently it's a slippery floor, and he was like, he's great though. He's just the nicest guy, and he's, sometimes I see people having a bit of a go at Napalm Death on Facebook, and it makes me angry.
Well, if you happen to follow Mick Harris,
well, not him, but like the current incarnation of Napalm Death got a lot of flack from the real like super DIY people.
I think it sucks because I think they probably get it at different ends. Like I think I'm sure they get shit about their political stances because they've been playing in the death metal scene for so long.
Yeah.
And they still do, but I mean, the younger crop of DM bands that are coming up, like Sanguis Sugabog and Frozen Soul and bands like that,
right.
generally that the old guard are mad at because they're more successful than them. Like I don't think they're all pretty like, on board with a lot of stuff, and I don't think would ever criticize Napalm Death for taking a stance on certain things. But I know that like, I mean, even going back to like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I like their music, but this PC shit, man. Like, it's like, dude, you know what that's Napalm Death. Like,
I mean, how could you not notice? Like,
like all their lyrics, like there's a lot of
literally all of them.
Like, there's a lot of grotesque stuff like related to war and shit, but that comes from Discharge. Like, I don't know.
Well, Barney always says that he always considers them, Napalm Death, to be a hardcore punk band. That's what he sees them as. But I like the way that 1 year they're going out with Slayer or like I don't know who else, and then the next month they're out with like Drop Dead or like Doom and playing in a DIY club, and I kind of like that. I think it's cool.
I got to see Doom once, and it was I was like, this is amazing. I got to see him at the 1 in 12 in Bradford.
Nice.
And that was what, 2005, 2006, something like that. And I was like, oh my God, I'm fucking seeing Doom. And it's funny because you think about different countries and like the way certain people fetishize whatever. But I was wearing a bootleg straight ahead shirt with the sleeves cut off. That by the end of the gig was soaked, and I was straight edge at the time myself, but it was soaked in beer from other people and my own sweat. And this very, very polite, very nice, like British youth crew dude was like, "I'll give you 20 pounds for it, mate." And I'm like, "Here you go."
Wow.
It was like bootlegged by the guy from Straight to Hell. It was like this one color yellow print, like the lion, like straight ahead shirt. I was like, here you go, man. Like,
wasn't Brian from Drop Dead in Straight to Hell?
I think he was. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a weird.
Mistaken,
yeah.
But anyway, so like I've been doing this forever. All I've been doing is just like kind of babbling about records. I relate some of my experiences. I have the same level of experiences as anybody else that's been around as long as I have. But I don't know. I'm hoping that more of my viewers, like, it's a kind of a common thing to say about like YouTubers you're trying to prop up, gas up, like this guy deserves more subs, but like you definitely do, you know,
I mean,
because
like I started this channel, the Analog Attack channel, because of a jazz vinyl group. What happened was like people were uploading their scores of the year, the best 5 jazz records of the year. They were not to YouTube, but straight to the Facebook group, right? So I was like, oh, I can do that. So I just did this like 5-minute video, and people were like, oh, that was pretty good. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll do this on YouTube from now on then. And so I started doing these, by myself videos, just pull off a stack of records from the shelf, and they were awful. I look back on them now and say, oh God, terrible, And I actually deleted most of those now. And so I was like, I got to do something. I got to like get people on, like guests on, So it's like, who do I know? And so I started asking people. But a lot of people don't want to come on YouTube,
yeah.
But when people start saying yes, other people start saying, yeah, that was pretty cool. I could do that. So, Barney was a one, and Chris Corrie was another big supporter early on. We did a lot of stuff together. Chris Corrie from, Magic Circle and Lifeless Dark.
Yep. I mean, I've known Chris for a pretty long time now. And he's always cool as hell. Like I randomly bought a Poison shirt, the German thrash Poison shirt off of him on Depop, and he's like, "Hey man, hope you're good. This is the best German thrash band, by the way." Okay, thanks, man. But yeah,
he's someone I
always had good interaction with him.
I knew him for like years on that message board that you've recently come aboard on. And we used to have like these funny arguments and stuff. But we had this kind of like mutual respect for each other because we kind of respected each other's tastes. And then like fast forward decades later, we're on YouTube together, like, talking about Iron Maiden. Like, it's pretty cool,
Yeah,
he's
for
a great
sure.
guy. Yeah.
And you had Ben from Drop Dead too, correct?
Ben came on. So this isn't like the program I do now. This is just like a guest comes on, and what we usually do is like the first half of the show, we talk about their band and what they've been doing, blah, 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 blah. And then the second half is, hey, any good records you've been like listening to lately? So it kind of stems from that, And so the last half of the show, they'll be like, yeah, this is a great record. This is my favorite UK hardcore band, blah, 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 blah. So it's like kind of a 2-part thing, First half about the band they're in, second half about the kind of records they've been listening to. So yeah, Ben was a good one. But my favorite one, I got kind of 2 favorites really. Well, Lou Collar from Sick of It All was like a surprise favorite.
Oh shit! I didn't know Blue Collar was on. That's awesome. I'll have to look that up.
That is one of my favorite episodes because it was just a joy to do. Right from from before we started recording until after we started recording, it was just so much fun.
It was
it was amazing. It was like, it was so cool. That was like one of my favorite episodes to do was Lou, definitely, for sure.
I actually got to interview him as well. And it was, It was a long time ago. It was, again, I want to say like 98 or something. And there was a girl that I knew from community college that was mostly into ska that did some college radio show. And this was when I was living in Rochester, New York, and the show was in Buffalo. And she was like, yeah, if you want to ask him the questions, like, go ahead. I don't know what to ask them. I haven't listened to them since their first album. And I think at this point they were on Scratch the Surface or maybe even past it. So, if you have more stuff to ask them, go ahead. And I was this kid that was, at that point, like a real spiky haired punk kid. At that point, I was starting to really get into crust and stuff like that. But I grew up seeing Sick of It All. I cut my teeth on just as much New York hardcore as, British punk, like The Exploited and GBH and stuff. So I had enough context to, have some good questions for them. And all those guys were like incredibly nice. Very, very cool. Like they had a tour bus. It was, it was on Scratch the Surface. They were on Atco or whatever. So they had like a really nice bus, and I went on. They're like, "You want a cup of coffee?" They gave me a cup of coffee, but they didn't have. You remember the weirdest stuff, like this random shit. But instead, they didn't have styrofoam cups, so they gave it to me in like a just a regular plastic cup, and it was like really hot and kind of melting. But I wanted to be polite, and I was like, "Thanks for the coffee, guys." Why am I remembering this? But But yeah, a lot of my questions at the time. I mean, I was barely 20, and I was very idealistic, and um the American punk scene, especially on the East Coast, was very tribalistic. There were tough guy hardcore kids in basketball jerseys and street punk kids, and the street punk kids didn't even really get along with the crusty punk kids a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole traditional skinhead was another thing, and whatever. I talked to Jason about that a bunch, like the last time I did this, but I remember asking Lou what I'm sure if I heard the interview now, it would be a lot of dumb questions about like, do you ever think the scenes will unite? Like that kind of stuff, or like do you like punk bands, right? Like I don't remember. I don't think it was quite. I'd like to think it wasn't quite that dumb because I wasn't like 14. I was like almost 20.
We briefly touched on that infamous Born Against Sick of It All like radio show thing. I was like, do you want to talk about this? He's like, yeah, if you want to, I don't mind. I can't remember what we said, but we did, and then just moved on to like talking about like Blue Oyster Cult and Black Sabbath. You know,
well, the thing is like I really love Born Against. I love what they did. I really respect their artistic vision, their lyrics. I read Sam McPheeter's book not that long ago. That's a really good read too. And he even admits it himself. He's like, I don't know what I was doing. I was poking the bear on purpose because I was being an asshole. Like, because you listen to that debate and it's like, I don't really think Born Against has much of a leg to stand on, really. Like, I don't even know what they're arguing for, you know? I mean...
Pat, I had, like, Charles from Rorschach on the What Are You Listening To show about a month or so ago, and after that we stopped filming, we were talking, and I was like... I kind of asked him about it, but he's like, he said, you know what? If I had the chance to do this all over again, he said, I would not have done that. He said he loves Sick of It All, and he was like, he was young... kind of similar to what Sam was saying, right? And he was just like, no, I wouldn't. If I wouldn't do it. It was
And another thing was Sam mentions in his book, like, oh well, I got my mental health stuff figured out at a certain point, and you know, I don't know what kind of meds he's on, but he's like, yeah, one day I forgot to reload my prescription or something and went off him for a day or two, and I was like, wait, I'm like so angry at everything, it's almost paralyzing. I remember how this was. Like, so it's like,
it seems so petty. I made it before I interviewed Lou. I kind of went back and checked it out, just for, context, and I was like, "This is so like so petty."
Yeah.
What are you even arguing about?
Yeah, exactly. And like Howie Abrams, I think was on that. Was it Steve Martin or Howie Abrams? I can't remember. But yeah, it's definitely worth a listen if you folks out there haven't heard the Born Against versus Sick of It All debate. It's all about selling out to something or other.
Yeah, but Lou, great guy, great guest, and we had so many things in common because he grew up with the same kind of music as just the heavy rock and heavy metal. So we just talked about like Black Sabbath and all that kind of stuff.
And where are you? Pardon my ignorance too. I feel like I've known this at some point, but where are you from?
In the UK?
Yeah.
Well, that's a kind of. Okay, so the place where I kind of lived the most and where I lived before I moved to Japan was a small town called Bath.
Okay.
And Bath is very near Bristol.
Right.
So in the 80s, I would go to shows like in Bristol, and there was a lot of gigs happening in Bristol in the like mid to late 80s and early 90s,
That's where...
So Bath and Bristol, basically. But, and again, it was weird. I'm a couple of years younger than like those classic Bristol bands like, Chaos UK and Disorder. So very like intimidating at the time, these like older guys, these older punks, like you didn't want to talk to them. And it was so weird thinking about it now, but we're only like 2 years apart, but it's like when you're young, it's like, God, these guys, I'm not going to go up and talk to these guys,
Oh yeah. It's a lot when you're a kid.
Yeah.
Like as time goes on incrementally, it dissolves into nothing, but
sure.
I mean, when you're a teenager, forget about it. What was going on? Well, so I mean, Chaos UK carried on. My favorite. Okay, that's fun. My favorite Chaos UK record, and because you guys were talking about this the last episode.
Yeah, last week. Yeah,
the one that I like the most is 100% Two Fingers in the Air punk rock.
Wow,
because it was the only one I heard for years.
There you go. Found it. Yeah.
It came out on Century Media, and I always knew of them as more almost like a street punk kind of band because of how those studio tracks are on that. And I mean, I really like that little pocket. It's like not
Interesting.
too, you know, it's aggressive enough. It's not, it's definitely not on the same level of stuff like the Casualties and all that American stuff. I feel like the first two restarts 7 inches are kind of in the
Mm,
same on the same wavelength where it's like real snarly but real catchy kind of street punk stuff. And then they have several live sets on that or whatever it is, a whole bunch of live
right.
tracks that are is their old stuff played tighter than the studio recordings from earlier.
Right,
And
right.
like just that really noisy shit took me a while to come around on. Like last couple of
Mm,
years is like when I really started to
really.
appreciate it. But
They kind of have like
I'm alone in that.
three different eras, I want to say, like the kind of UK 82 hardcore punk with the early singles, and then when
Yep.
then Moa joined, right? So you get
Yep.
that short, sharp shock era, which is kind
Yep.
of my favorite. And then you move into the 90s with Chaos
Chaos.
back on
Yeah.
vocals and doing like the more street punk, like punk rock. It was like a reaction to what was going on at the time. Too much like
Mhm.
heavy metal in the scene and all that kind of stuff. Let's go back to playing like punk rock kind
Yeah.
of statement, you know?
I saw that too when I went to London, like in the late '90s. Like a lot of people that, like, I hung out with a few people. They were like, we'd sit around drinking cider, and they're like, "Oh, let's look at my old photo books." And I was like, "Wow, you look like a kind of like a metal dude, but with I didn't know what crusties really were over
Right.
there yet." I mean, I did because I myself like had dreads and stuff, but I didn't understand the lineage or any of that kind of shit yet because everything was word of mouth. But that whole era of like stenchcore and all black and Wellington boots and everything. But like one dude in particular was like, yeah, he was an American guy actually. He's like, yeah, this is Be It C Squat, and it's like him and his friends, and they're clad in black and they have super long hair. And I look at the guy and he's got like short green hair with like a leopard print thing dyed into it, and I was like, wow, everybody here is really into being super punk again, I
Mm,
guess, right? And it was
yeah.
also like, suicidal supermarket trolleys were
That's
also
another. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
claiming that whole thing, and like, god damn, that LP is so good.
It's good. It's kind of hard to find now, though. Weirdly enough. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually found uh so their demo on reissued on CD in some weird distro, some
Mm,
weird tiny distro like mine. And it was like a professionally reissued CD of their demo, which was half of it is what made it onto the LP, and the other half was some
wow.
extra stuff. But and I think it's mixed a little bit differently or something. But yeah, I mean that LP is awesome, and I kind of wish Distraught would have done more with Simon on vocals, but
Mm,
they did Thought Crime, which was pretty much
right.
the same bunch of dudes anyway. So
I remember, like, I went to Bristol in like mid '80s, and it was like a Onslaught, Chaos UK, and Disorder gig, if I remember rightly. And I got there a bit early, and I still remember this. It's such a weird image to have, but I got in the hall, and there was like, I think it was either Moa or Gabba from Chaos UK was sat on a chair, just like covered in their rags, reading the newest copy of Kerrang. I know. And then like years later, you get the new lineup of Chaos UK, which is like, no, we hate heavy metal. We're gonna play like punk rock now, kind of thing. So
yeah,
yeah,
because they had nods to they did a covers record where they covered like Anti-Scene and
yeah,
some weird Gigi Allen song or something like that. They were
yeah.
definitely kind of looking
That
at American stuff a little bit. It seemed like at the
it's
time.
not that good. That came out in Japan, right, on vinyl Japan.
Yeah, I think
But
so.
but going back to those gigs that I used to go to, like, I remember like going to see like things like Fugazi and like No Means No and stuff in Bristol, and all those Chaos UK guys will be there, and they'll be shouting out GBH, Partisans, real punk. When Fugazi and stuff is playing, stuff like that. It's pretty funny.
That's pretty funny. I mean, I think like you read all that like Get in the Van stuff about how Ian was over there with Black Flag in the early '80s, and I could just see him being like, still,
But I
still,
get a feeling that they were actually friends, and it was just some like humorous banter. It wasn't
yeah,
malicious.
probably.
Yeah, yeah. It was kind of weird though at the time because I didn't really. It's like Partisans. Jesus, I haven't listened to them in like. What are you talking about? Partisans,
Yeah.
Why are you bringing them up at the no means no at the no means no gig kind of thing?
Because I remember a friend of mine, like we went to, it was a punk meets ska show, like sometime in the mid '90s, where it was the main band that I wanted to see was a band called the Disenchanted from Albany that were an interesting mix of styles. They kind of had that like '90s street punk thing and like the sort of the polish of some of the Fat Records bands, but the singer sang like the singer of Filth. Like they were kind of all over the place, but they were good. They were definitely unique. And then they played with the local ska band Too Hectic, who were like two-tone, pretty good two-tone stuff, like that kind of thing. And then this band called Beta Minus Mechanic that were emo, like they were 90s emo, you know. And while Beta Minus Mechanic was playing, my friend, who was a crusty kid, was yelling like, "The Toy Dolls are punk!" Like, it's like, I forget what else he said, like, you know, whatever, like, the Partisans are punk. This shit isn't punk. I'm like, and I was friends with the emo band. I'm like, dude, stop yelling at my friends, please. Like, this, it just goes to show, no matter what, like, there's always some kind of goofy stuff. Like, was there any?
Funny though, because I remember like around that time, like going to see like I don't know, like the UK subs. This is like 1990 or something like that. You know, I remember thinking, God, these Charlie's old, really old. You know,
I know.
And this is like 1990, right? And I was like, these.
No, I remember thinking that like a couple years later, but yeah,
like these guys are still going, and they were not that great, and not many people in the audience, you know, at all. They're much more popular now than they were in 1990. That's for sure.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely. It's weird. And they had like scabs, like they had American people in the, like, because I think pretty famously, I think not Lars Fredriksson, but Tim Armstrong from Rancid was in the UK subs for a hot minute.
All those bands got a bit of a boost from that thing too, right? That whole Rancid thing. You know, they got like a second wind or a third wind.
Mm-hmm. And Belvey, the guy who played drums in the Catatonics from Syracuse, was also in the UK subs for a minute. He was also in 7 Seconds, which is also weird because that's a guy I know.
Yeah, I think pretty much everyone has been in the UK subs at this point. Is there anybody that hasn't?
I'm due tomorrow. I got to get on a plane. But was there? I'm always kind of curious about the UK scene, like when that second wave, like post 85, 86, started to come in with Heresy and the Stupids and all that great stuff. Was there any? I don't think there's friction necessarily, but was there a big any kind of discourse about how like the old spiky punks aren't cool anymore or anything like that? You know,
that's an interesting point actually, because at that time, we're talking like kind of mid 80s, right? Like 85, 86, 87, right? So at that point in my life, I was kind of living in a punk squat with like these, you know, anarcho punk dudes. Like 8 of us in this big house, and I remember like getting that Napalm Death record on a tape, and just that was it. That was like a new start for me. That the Scum album, right?
Yeah.
This is like something new because I was kind of getting a little bit burnt out. I mean, there wasn't that. I guess anarcho punk was still kind of a thing, but it was like that was like, okay, this is like a new start. This is something new and exciting. I remember it to this day. And then Heresy and all those bands. I don't think there was. I don't know. I think that even like Heresy was still playing with like older, more anarcho bands at that point. Not GBH, you know, you probably see like Anti-Sect and Heresy, and, you know, things like that.
Yeah, sure.
It's I'm kind of plucking things out of thin air at the moment, but I remember that whole scene being really exciting, like Heresy and, you know, Napalm Death, and Concrete Socks.
I think it was Jeff Walker from Carcass, who obviously, you know, has a strong roots in all that UK hardcore stuff. He was, I believe he was in the Electro Hippies, and
that's it. I saw the Electro Hippies with Carcass at the same show one time.
Yeah, but I remember him like in an interview, like talking about like, oh yeah, like we're UK hardcore and punk, not crap like GBH though, like specifically saying that, and I'm like,
well, there was a moment too where GBH was just considered to be like this. That's old. That's old. That era's gone now. You know, we're not going to sing about big women and that kind of thing. You know, they were not they were not a cool band for a while there. You know, now of course they are. They
I
are
think
again.
it feels that way in all kinds of
Yeah,
scenes because
sure.
I mean the first couple of years I was going to shows where I grew up, like anything from the 80s wasn't cool. Other than Minor Threat was acceptable because they invented straight edge, and like Judge was cool because they were really militant. But I mean, where I grew up, if it was fast or like Agnostic Front, The Exploited, Cro-Mags, it was all the same shit. It was corny old school stuff, and like nobody.
That's also interesting how we kind of mentioned it before, like bands like that got that second or third wind from being picked up by the like New York hardcore scene or by
Yeah,
Rancid and all that kind of stuff. Like because the Exploited and
yeah,
GBH, their careers were kind of not over, but they were struggling, you know.
yeah, for sure.
At that point,
Um,
yeah,
and GBH especially, like they've been touring over here a lot. I mean,
they're a professional band. They're like Napalm Death. I think they have this not the same booking agency, but they're kind of on the same circuit. But they're all friends, you know. Barney's good friends with Colin. They're from the same
oh for
town.
sure.
They're
Oh
from
yeah,
Birmingham.
yeah,
They're all
yeah.
friends, you know. So
I always forget GBH is from Birmingham. When I think of Birmingham, I don't think of punk. I think of Napalm Death and Black Sabbath and Judas Priest. But yeah, now that
yeah,
you mentioned, yeah.
yeah, and Doom too from that area, I think as well. No, Doom are from Bradford. I don't know.
They're from Bradford. That much I know.
Yes,
Just
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
I hung out. I didn't hang out in too many different places in the UK, but I spent a lot of time in Bradford and Leeds because a friend of mine was in a band with I think members of Doom called the Bloodsucking Freaks.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
I, I stayed with her a bunch of times and I
Cool.
went to a bunch of gigs at the 1 and 12. I went over there 3 different occasions between 99 and the mid 2000s. So I just kind of, I mean, it's like Bradford is a bleak fucking place, but like
Hey, I've never
I
been
love
there, but like the 1 in 12 club is kind of legendary, you know.
Oh,
And,
it's awesome. I'm
yeah,
trying to think who I've seen there. The first time I was there, I saw Hell Nation and Short Hate Temper with Urko and
frozen up.
uh, and
Oh,
a French grind band. I'm not remembering. Oh, Vomit for Breakfast was the name of the
oh,
French band.
there you go.
And and then the second time I went over, I saw DS13 and ETA
Nice.
there. And then the last time I was there, I saw Doom there. So you know,
Yeah, you know, I'm from the southwest of England, so Bradford
yeah,
always just seemed like so far away.
yeah. I mean,
The
sure,
north, the far
yeah.
north, like four
It's
hours on a coach or something. It's like, no, I'm not going there. It's like,
uh, see to Americans, like
it's like the
hopping
next town, right?
hopping on the Chinatown bus going from Boston to New York is it's no big deal.
Yeah, right.
Actually, it's terrible. It sucks, but we do it anyway, or we
I
used
feel
to.
like Brian from Doom was like kind of the sound man there, and he did engineered like a lot of recordings that were done at the 1 in 12
Yeah,
club.
it would make sense. Because I
Yeah.
think that was the guy that also played in Stalingrad, which I did not know, but I was educated
Mm.
about. Yeah, I think he's got a lot to do with the running of that place. I know it's still going. I don't know have any idea about what's going on with it now, but I was just amazed by it the first time I went because I was like, it's 3 floors. The bottom floor
Mm.
is the stage, and then there's a bar with really
Mm.
cheap good beer. Then upstairs there's pool table. Or no, upstairs is like a cafe, and there's also a
Wow.
bar again. And then the
Wow.
third floor, there's pool tables and a bar. Like, this
Wow.
rules. This is so cool.
There's a
And
lot of that in Europe, though, especially like Germany
yeah,
and stuff. A lot of those
oh,
kind of local government funded youth centers and stuff. You
yeah.
know.
There's and I went to the Warzone Center in Belfast
Oh wow.
once, and
Yeah.
that was
Wow.
also really cool. And
Wow.
and it's not government funded, but I went to that Zorro Fest in Leipzig, Germany, and that was
Mm.
also mind blowing. But yeah, I'm glad I did that shit when I was younger because
So I think Leeds has like that Temple of Boom now, right? Which is done owned by Lecky from Voorhees,
oh
kind of a
okay, I've heard
DIY club.
cool. I've heard of it. I didn't know it was
Mm.
owned by Lucky. That's rad. Yeah, I
I
saw
think so.
Voorhees. I
Mm.
saw Voorhees open for that DS13 show, and I was
Mm.
like, oh my god, I'm seeing Voorhees. So excited. Nobody's doing anything. Everybody's just standing here. Okay, fuck.
Yeah, I guess Napalm Death played there like last year. It's kind of which was cool. It's like it's a really small like DIY club, you know, and they said they had a great time playing it. You know, punk
Oh, that's
club.
awesome.
Yeah. just looking at the guests I've had on. We didn't like mention Dave Whitty who came on too from Municipal Waste. He was a fun guest that we had on a couple of years ago.
I bet that guy's got a ton of cool stories and stuff like that.
Yeah, and he's living a good life, touring around the world with Municipal Waste. So pretty cool. And of course, Todd Burdett was the most most surprising guest to people watching.
Oh yeah,
the guy that doesn't even do interviews is suddenly there on on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
In a bar. Took a while, but yeah, he watched a few other shows. I was like, yeah, I can do this. This is cool. So that's kind of got one of my highest watched videos, I think.
I would think, just because you're not going to see like
No.
Todd Burdett talk to like little punk people or like Nardwar, or like he's not going to appear on Loudwire or anything like that, So pretty rare.
That is funny though, like because you will see Barney doing that though, on all the big metal channels being asked the same questions like over and over and over and over again.
Not on your program though.
No, it's like God, the stuff we talk about. It's like I had a few complaints, but most people like it. It's like Jesus Christ, what are you guys talking about? Just like it's like, just because we go off like we're doing now, right? We just go off on these tangents, about all sorts of stuff. And it's like, why don't you interview him like properly? And it's like, well, because he's done that like a million times,
Yeah,
just wants to.
I would be like, do you still have the Vicious Rumor shirt? do you still rep the Vicious Rumor shirt? That's my question.
Yeah, it's just funny. I usually don't even have any questions to ask him. It's just like, he says, no, let's do it then. I was like, all right. And then it's like, Jesus, what am I going to just go? Just like this, right? Just go wherever it takes us, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Pretty fun. Yeah.
Are you so you're mostly doing the what are you listening to stuff now?
You know what? I kind of felt that like I needed some kind of direction,
Mm-hmm.
some kind of focus. And this program seems to kind of fit that bill,
It's a good,
every week.
It's a good, solid, I think speaking of like all the stuff that we don't want to friggin' think about or deal with because it's gross, but like in terms of analytics and all that kind of crap. But I mean, consistency is pretty key, for getting engagement and all that kind of stuff. That's why I'm doing the every.
There you go, Mondays, right?
Because I at least want to. If I don't hold myself to some kind of standard, I'll just be like, I got video games to play, and I
it's like
just my channel for like 2 months. Like that happens to me often, so I figure.
This is actually my third time round with this YouTube thing. I did it for a bit, didn't do it for like a year. Started it up again, did all the Iron Maiden stuff with Chris and a lot of other stuff, with Lou and Todd, and then I got bored of it again and stopped doing it. And then the Bill's Facebook thing was kind of my inspiration for like starting it back up again. And this is fun though. It's very focused. It's like I know what I'm doing every week. It's not like, oh, what am I going to do next week? Am I going to rank the Carcass album? Am I going to do like the best 15 Greek anarcho-punk records? It's like none of that. Just keep it real simple and, simple show. Different guests on every week,
I think that's a good way to be. I think like, especially for the guys over at Heavy Metallurgy, I'm not sure if you've checked that out yet.
I've been told that I'm kind of in like our programming kind of like clashes, but I think is there a crossover with that program with my thing? Not really. That's true. Yeah.
It depends on who you have on.
Right.
And it depends on what they're talking about.
Ooh.
I mean, sometimes like it depends on what they're talking about because Ellen and Marty are like very much like very cool, smart, like very metal dudes. So sometimes I'll be talking to, I'm just speaking personally, but sometimes I'll be talking about deep dives. I'm like, oh, cool. They're going to just talk about crossover or something. Like I'm on board for that. I'll be watching that. Then they'll be like, let's do a Halloween deep dive. And I'm like, you're going to lose me after Walls of Jericho. I don't really, but they go on deep dives. They talk about specific bands. I think it's kind of an apples and oranges sort of thing.
Yeah, I think I've been told that like mine's like too wide because like it's like you never know what you're going to get, and it's goes from like experimental, like post-punk to grind, but it's not that wide. But I think people do like to know this is a metal show. This is like, whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas this is kind of like a little bit wider,
Yeah.
Like, what are you listening to? It's like kind
it's
of wide.
it's like going on that message board. Like, I think most of the people from that sphere, that know each other through the internet, like, they're people that have roots in punk and hardcore, but didn't at some point were like, I want to check out some other stuff.
Yeah.
Like, people, you go down rabbit holes and get into like psych or whatever, like, when you get older. And I think that's just kind of reflected in the Facebook group and the YouTube show. And I think
it's definitely, they're very definitely in sync with each other. I think the Facebook group and my show, it's very similar, I would say.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite moments is when we had like Sean from like Bastard Noise and Pissed Happy Children as a guest on, and he was like first, I think, in the I think I went first and he was second. He's like, okay, my first pick of the day is this record that my kids like this band, and I don't really know too much about this band, but I thought I should buy this record because I want to engage with my kids a little bit more about music. And I was like, he's like, do you guys know this band? And he holds up like the newest Deftones album. And I was like, this is so cool because it's like so unpretentious.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this a little bit. It's like, okay, this is like open the door now. You don't have to try and be cool. You can show whatever you want.
Yeah.
Be honest. And it was a good moment. It was like, cool. But it was not innocent. It's like, you guys know this band? It's like Deftones kind of thing, it's the burly old like, power violence dude, It's like...
Yeah, exactly. And I could see, and also like, I don't really care for the Deftones, but like I can definitely see how, I mean, they come from like a space sonically that is not too dissimilar from their contemporaries like Korn and whatever, but they also were a lot more genuine than those bands, and I think we're like really kind of like forging their own path. And I think that sort of intent can kind of shine through to somebody like the guy from Man is the Bastard. Like, so that's, I think that's cool.
I don't, my kids are into this band. What's this band? You guys know this band?
It's also awesome that he's just like, what are my kids into? I'm going to give it a shot. Like, that's
exactly.
Great.
I was just, this is so cool. And everyone else's reaction is like, yeah, I kind of like that. What's it called? White Pony. That's a good record. Everyone was kind of supporting him, like, it's like,
that's awesome.
Pretty, yeah.
And also, Metallurgy does do just kind of like, what are you spinning this week kind of stuff too. And they also stream on Wednesdays to do more just like, they'll all talk about one record. And they're expanding into having one person just do like solo record reviews. So I think they're kind of trying to expand a little bit and do more of like a banger TV kind of thing, which is cool because I really appreciate Marty and Alan's knowledge. So, and hopefully at some point I'll get to do one of those reviews. But yeah, I think what they do is really cool, but internet's a big place. There's plenty of room.
There's room for everybody, right? It's like, I don't feel like there's any competition or anything like that.
No, I don't.
Right?
I think everybody's kind of got their own thing. And that's the nice thing about VODs and streams. You can watch them later. So
true. I don't get that many people watching live, but the next day, at the weekend, I guess people check it out Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah, and
I have the time difference too, right? It's always like it's like Saturday morning for me, and it's always Friday night. I was like, why do you always have like 3 American dudes on your show every week? It's just because it matches my schedule and everyone else's schedule the best.
3 often drunk American
dudes. But American dudes are the best. They're so friendly and like helpful and like warm and kind. It's just like, hey, like.
Well, that's a positive stereotype for us. Thank you.
Yeah, for that. Hey, it surprised me. I'm not saying, but it was a surprising outcome of doing this. Was wow, these guys are all so nice, like and nice to each other,
I think especially the stripe of American that you're consorting with, all these like DIY punk kind of, not that they're all that, but like more or less people from that kind of background, like. Generally those people are usually really, really cool and really, really nice.
Yeah. I kind of knew that, but it's just like, it's nice to see it kind of play out, every week,
And even if it's in spite of ourselves or not on purpose, we were often at least entertaining and kind of funny.
And
So
that I like the humor aspect of it too. It's you've got to have a sense of humor, right? You can't take yourself
oh yeah,
too seriously,
absolutely.
right? Otherwise, you don't want to watch four guys being like super earnest about records. It's like,
That's the one disconnect I have, even though like, I listen to these days, I'm more involved with and listen to more metal. Um, and I do appreciate the metal scene very much.
me too, me too.
But like there still is this sort of like almost wrestling kayfabe, like po-faced sort of thing going on where it's like, dude, this shit's been around. Singing about the devil stuff has been around for like 40 years. It's not scaring any. Well, maybe nowadays in America things are shifting to the right and to religious fundamentalism again. I mean, your day in the sun might come back, I guess, but like, just have a Twix bar and have some chocolate.
I
Go
have a lot of metal that I kind of I do listen to that I haven't really showed yet, especially from last year. Last year was a great year for
yeah.
metal, I thought. I have a whole bunch like right here that I just haven't even talked about or shown at all on the channel
There's
right now.
so much of it. That's
That
the
too much
thing
almost. Right?
that's gotten to be like, so since I started my channel in 2016, late
Yeah.
2016, I was, it's one of those things where I was burnt out on hardcore for a little bit. I'd gone through the hoaxes and the creams and all that stuff, and I was like, all right,
Right.
cool. And like a lot of people, I mean, I death metal was like my first kind of love when I was like 13 or 14. I got the Grind Crusher comp and some
Right.
other stuff, and was really into it. And then death metal got really technical. I didn't like black metal really much when it came out. I grew to like it later, like the second wave black metal stuff.
Right.
And somewhere, in my late 20s, early 30s, I was like, oh, like there's underground bands that are kind of keeping the spirit of the 80s and early 90s alive. It's not all triggered drums and like super technical shit. Like there's bands that sound like Entombed and stuff. So I got into it and I really immersed myself in it, and it kept me sustained for like a long time. But at a certain point, I was like, and I think it can be attributed to it's really easy to record now. You don't need to go into a studio. A lot of the stuff can be done through a laptop or whatever. It's really easy to manufacture music. There's just a glut of people that can play their instruments really well. I was like, and it went through okay, we have a bunch of bands that sound like Entombed. Okay, now we have a bunch of bands that sound like Incantation, all this stuff. And I just, at a certain point, I was like, I might all this behind me. I'm like, this is a lot of this is just death metal, really. Like, and I'm just like, okay, I need to step away for a minute. And I only want like the bullet points now of like the best, like maybe dozen to 20 albums out of like extreme metal a year. Like that's all I have room for, I'm more like, oh, like I didn't really explore D-Beat that much other than a few token bands. So let's figure that out. Let's figure out the difference between Burning Spirits and Crasher Crust, because I have no idea what the hell this shit is. Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What's the difference between Kang and Mangle? Like, I don't know. Let's figure
Egg
that
punk
out.
and chain punk, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's been more my vibe. Like I like this grind stuff I'm talking about. Like this has been great. All this stuff that's come out recently. It's more important to me that it's just, and this sounds really basic ass and like kind of a trope and cliche, but it's more important to me that it's just well written, like good songs, like that's
good songs are important.
Yeah. So
I have my list here, like actually of last year's, like the Diver record, Through Sheer Will and Black Magic. That was a good one, right?
Yeah, I just picked that up for my distro on cassette.
There you go.
I just sampled it, and it is really good. Yeah, it's Black Thrash.
Cool, right? Because my location, I tend to get stuff that's on like $20 spin or Darkness
Descends.
Darkness Descends, or like GZS label in England, Sako S and whatever it's called.
Meisaka Unojo.
Yes, that label. Stuff that I can pick up kind of easily here.
Dark Descent, not Darkness.
Dark Descent. Yes, let's get it right. Dark
Descent.
Descent. Yeah.
But yeah, I order a lot of stuff through MSUO, which is kind of funny because I get their records wholesale pretty cheap via Ebullition, and they're imports. And I have these like import versions of these records that are coming out on other labels in my distro for, I think, cheaper than the domestic versions sometimes, which is weird. But yeah, I mean, that dude puts out a lot of good stuff.
I know he comes to Japan. We're kind of friends. He's real like DIY spirit kind of a guy, you know.
Seems like it. Yeah.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah.
Because I think he's tight with the quality control folks too. I think they're buddies and stuff.
Well, him and Paco from the punk label. Jesus Christ, why am I spacing on? You know, that label, based in London, run by Paco, puts out all the good punk.
Oh, Les Vida Enus Muse, or
that's it. Yeah, they're close friends.
Oh, gotcha.
They always come to Japan together.
That's a great label too. Jesus,
yeah. They have a similar way of doing things. In fact, even though music kind of different.
I think the punk labels records are more expensive, actually. at least via Ebullition, whatever. That's fine. I got no issue paying. It's good, but yeah.
And what a Sadistic Ritual, the Enigma Boundless was another one that I kind of liked.
That's a great record. That's really good, and also that's a one that it's not, you know, completely singular. I mean, it's still contained within a genre, but it doesn't sound like they're aping a particular year of thrash or any specific bands that they're drawing from, but it sounds old. Like, I love that when it's like an uncanny valley missing link of something that could have existed during a certain time period, and the lyrics are really good on that as well.
Yeah, and one we've never talked about, I think it came out really, really early last year, is that Convent record, Call Down the Sun.
That I haven't heard.
It's like an all-female band from like Denmark or Holland. It's their second album. They're on Napalm Records. It's like Death Doom, but done like really, really well.
I tend to, for whatever reason, just see the Napalm Records logo and be like,
I know what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying. I hear you. But that is a great band. Convent with a K. It's their second album.
I'll have to check that out then. Yeah.
It's just, I never talked about it on the channel. It came out like January last year, I think. It kind of got lost, you know. Yeah. Great record. Yeah,
there's a handful that I still haven't caught up with, and I never will, probably.
Oh no, it's last year, right? It's like, and there's Autopsy. That was Static Abyss was okay. You know.
Yeah, I'm sure it was good. You know, like I don't think Autopsy's anything bad, but that's the current timeline we're living in. We've got with bands as new genres. Now we're in the Autopsy period, where there's a bunch of bands that sound a lot like Autopsy or exactly like Autopsy. The best of which being Molder from Chicago, who are really fucking good.
My favorite thing was that kind of like 80s heavy metal influence kind of bands like Sonya, like Loud Arriver, and like the Spell album and stuff like that.
I really want to hear that Sonya record. That's definitely on something I'm going to pick up very soon. Because that's that ex-member of Absu, right?
There's a big story behind that. You can read online about that whole thing. But yeah,
definitely on the side of the member from Sonya on that one.
Exactly. Yes.
But
I kind of didn't explain that. This record came up a little bit on a previous episode, and I didn't kind of explain it very, very well in the moment. But yeah, people should kind of check out the history behind how this band came about.
Yeah, definitely worth reading about. And the one that everybody's talking about now, which I was like, my sleep schedule and my work schedule is ridiculous. So I was out of work at 6:30 this morning, and then stayed awake to like get my kid to school and everything. And I was laying down at about 9:00 a.m. And I was like, oh yeah, like this is my thought as I'm like almost drifting off into unconsciousness. I'm like, I gotta check out that new Hell Ripper. I'm like, and like, because I had the first one on CD, and since I bought that one in 2020, I think, or 2021, they put out another record last year.
Yeah, this is their third album, right? The new one. Right?
Yeah, and people have been, it's had some buzz about it.
It does. I checked it out. it's the one man band, right, from Scotland. Is what we're talking about.
They're from Scott. Yeah.
It has that production on it that it sounds like it was made on a computer.
Yeah,
it probably was.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like that, and also again, along with like old school death metals of varying stripes, death metals. One thing that I'm just very like choosy about this at this point is any kind of Venom, sleazy Venom, Motorhead, Kill 'Em All, Metallica.
Oh, we're talking like Jesus, White Spade.
Yeah,
was the big one from last
black
year.
rock and roll kind of stuff, like anything along those lines. That first Hell Ripper, I gave it another listen before I slipped off into Slumberland, and I was like, oh yeah, this is really good, and that sounds a lot more raw. This new one, I'm not sure. I'll have to give it another listen or two right now. And I'm a big person. I'm a big like I have to own it to listen to it.
Sure, yeah.
Like, weird OCD weirdo about stuff.
Yeah,
and I was looking at it, and it's like not. It's pretty expensive. Like it's still import prices for it, so I'm like, I'm not gonna worry about it right now. But I'm definitely a proponent. Like I appreciate that kind of stuff. Like anything that borrows from that. I love that 80 to 83 heavy metal kind of thing, especially if it's fused with black metal or death metal. If it's done right, it's so good. When Midnight started, early Midnight stuff, I went and saw them every single chance I could get. It was so good. But like everything else, it's reached a saturation point at this stage. So I'm kind of backing up a little.
I like the new album, but I hear what you're saying. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I like the new Midnight too. I thought it was better than the last one.
Right.
But I'm most of the time I'm just going to reach for their like compilation of early materials or
double album, right?
Yeah. Complete and Total Midnight.
There's two versions of that though. Like there's like one with the silver cover and then one with the red cover. One is like slightly updated, right? It has like extra.
Yeah, because the red cover came out on Nuclear War Now. The silver cover came out on Hell's Headbangers. The silver cover has the Berlin is Burning 12-inch single on it.
There you go.
The Nuclear War Now one does.
There's a slight difference, right? But, so I had to get both of them, of course.
Yeah. I have the tape of the
nice.
Hell's Headbangers one and the LP of the Nuclear War Now one. And I'd Satanic Royalty also was like awesome when it came out. But everything they've done since then has been decent. It's just like
I think Satanic Royalty is definitely the best one of this new batch of more shiny
it's really good. The 10-inch that came along before it too was really good.
Something shocks of violence. Shocks of violence
is good, and then the 10-inch with like Vomit Queens on it and stuff, which I think is included on the discography, is really good. But I mean, they were so good live every single time I saw them at that time. Like I was just like, holy shit! Like this band's a force to be reckoned with. It's like,
So I don't like have a physical list of people that I want to have on the show, but Jamie from Midnight is definitely someone I'd like to talk to.
Athanar,
yes, as his real name.
That was the thing about the Banger Studios stuff and the Hellcast stuff. Like every single time they had him on, I'm like, can he please just have his own show where he just does his own?
Yeah,
because he's so goddamn funny. I saw them open for Samhain at the Best Buy Center in New York. And it's a massive, huge venue. I don't know what the cap is. I think it's like 2,000 or something like that. It felt like that anyway. And he's like, Best Buy. It's weird being at this place and not stealing CDs. Just like, and Wide Eye played that too, which was.
I saw him on this other show. I forget what it was, but he was going through like his new wave of British heavy metal collection. That was really cool too.
I think that was on one of those Banger Studios things, or
okay, all right,
Hellcast or whatever it is. Yeah, they toured his house, and his collection's pretty great. So
yeah, I know. It's like wow, yeah. His house is pretty nice too. I have to say.
It's super clean.
I was like checking out the house more than the.
Yeah, they were like talking to him in his kitchen. It was like spotless and immaculate. I'm like, my kitchen doesn't fucking look like that.
that was funny.
Filth, lust, and sleaze, indeed. Look at that kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I should probably wrap it up. I got to get my
All right.
kid to bed.
God, it's been an hour and a half already. Time flies, right? When you're having
I know.
a good time.
Airplanes crash and all that stuff. Anyways, yeah, I'm looking forward to March 18th, right?
March 18th, your time, which is a Saturday. March 18th, 10 p.m. EST. We're going. Patrick's coming on, and Jesus Christ, Clifford,
yeah,
and Mike Woodford. So four YouTubers together. It's going to be a big hit, right?
Right. That's right. That's where the real money's at.
Yeah, yeah. It's going to be a 200 yener, I think.
A lot of eyeballs on that one.
Oh yeah.
Right on. Well, have a good rest of your day off, man. Enjoy your national holiday.
Yeah. It's it hasn't been one for a while. It's a good chance to do this and talk to you. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you taking the time on your day off.
Sure. Nothing else to do. I'm going to just drink more beer and listen to more records, I think. And
I'm going to do the same after I get my kid to bed.
There you go.
All right, man. Well, cheers. I'm going to end this, and I say hit end, and then end pops up again.